Who wins the War Within tank tier list? So this list is probably very fluid, continually changing, but based on the new hero talent reworks and everything, it seems like Marcellian has finally worked out his list. My question is, where does the greatest tank of all time fall? The Blood DK. Let's find out.
I have played all of the tanks in the War Within beta with all of the hero talents and their tier sets, and I have come to a conclusion as to which one is the best, which one is the worst, and who goes in between. And we're going to be judging all of these based on fun, design, a little bit on numbers, because that's also slightly important, but numbers with a pinch of salt, since they will always be tuned differently while the game.
And mind you, by the way, how the way the new Mythic Plus affixes work, whoever your tank is going to be very important, because they're going to be taking a shitload of damage.
Is going to be released. And we're going to start it off with Blood Death Knight, the most recently reworked tank, likely to receive a bunch more changes up until the game is released, at the very least in the positioning of Gorfiend's Grasp as well. However, when it comes to the pure functionality and with the new changes in playstyle, most likely with how Bone Storm is going to be working and actually consuming your Bone Shield charges and blasting the damage, of course, and not actually eating up your runic power is going to be good. Also will work fantastically with the tier set.
Yeah, the way the tier set bonus works, if you remember, when a piece of Bone Shield falls off, it like buffs you.
Probably be up to debate is the current uptime on the tier set. With all of the spending of the Bone Shields, generating the Bone Shields, AoE is going to have a different profile as opposed to raid, since you lose more Bone Shields in AoE rather. And the dungeons that we have access to on the beta right now, they're not Mythic Plus, there's not raiding out yet, so we can probably just assume at this point. However, it functions neatly. The tier set is a little bit bland, but that's fine. And with the actual hero talents, Blood Decay just plays fantastically. Whether you go with Sandlane or Deathbringer, you're gonna have a lot of fun. It's not particularly obvious if one is better than the other, which is great, because you probably want to have
I like the
a choice and not feel like you're shoehorned into one particular option out of the two. So we're going to start off by putting Blood Decay into, I would say, A tier. It's doing really good. And it's only going to get better for Blood Decay from now on. Talking about tanks and ranking their design wouldn't be possible without today's sponsor, Boot.dev.
Oh, there it is.
An online platform designed to teach you how to write tons of code, since, just like WoW, the only way to learn is to do. And with Boot.dev, you'll be getting your hands on the keyboard and shipping projects from minute one. By using Boot.dev, you'll learn back-end web development from scratch with the programming languages Python and Go, and I think we can all appreciate...
Yeah, so far, honestly, all the feedback I've heard about Blood DK has been pretty positive. And I'm excited the fact that I'll get a chance to play two different hero talent specs, maybe.
Comes in with the most creative way to learn code.
That's some good balancing on Blizzard's part.
Transforming the entire experience into an RPG game that's self-paced and captivating. I mean, you learn XP and level up, you have achievements and quests to complete, and all work towards making you a better and better programmer. And most of all, it prevents you from getting bored. What better way is there to learn? Not to mention that the job prospects are bangers for backend web developers. Based on the data from Stack Overflow, the median salary for a backend developer in the US is over $160K a year.
That's not bad.
To get started, simply click the link in the description box and use our code MarcellianOnline to get 25% off of your first payment for Boot.dev. That's 25% off of your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription type you choose. Thanks Boot.dev for sponsoring our video. And now, as I shed my glasses one more time, we're gonna be going into Brewmaster. The quote-unquote loser of this tier list. Now, I do have to mention this, that it's probably commonly known for anybody who has been on the beta and actually played with Brewmaster or played with somebody that played Brewmaster, that stagger is just weird. Most people say that it's currently bugged in the way that it scales, or that we're just very low eye level. It could be both. It just felt significantly worse than any other tank. So stagger right now on beta, if you go into a dungeon, whether it is normal or heroic, your eye level is scaled. And whether it's scaled to normal or heroic levels, your stagger is still about 12 to 13% baseline, which is doubled by shuffle, bringing it to 20.
Man, I feel bad for Brewmaster. I do. It's been tough going for them. It has been. I mean, I feel like Monk healing has been in a good spot at times. Monk DPS, but Brewmaster, was Brewmaster ever best tank during Dragonflight? Can you guys remind me? I know Demon Hunter had its time in the spotlight. Paladin had his time in the spotlight, but yeah, I don't remember Brewmaster ever getting to the top. Blood DK's always been decent.
25%, let's say, on average
Not this
in
expansion.
mid-combat.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Not enough to keep you up. I have had huge problems trying to stay alive with Brewmaster, and normally I would say, listen, this is probably just tuning and is going to be fixed by the time the live game launches, but I would have said the same thing, and I probably did say the same thing with Dragonflight, because Brewmaster was also very squishy in the beta for Dragonflight, and unfortunately it remained squishy throughout. It got some tiny buffs, but it has been the squishy tank of the expansion of Dragonflight, and that hasn't changed no matter what tuning they do.
And don't forget, with the new affixes and everything, you're only going to get squishier. I mean, some of these affixes, basically, the mobs are going to be ignoring your armor. 20% of your armor, they're going to be hitting harder. I mean, if you're squishy now, wait until you get those damn affixes. It's going to be even worse.
I don't know if it's going to change now. I
meta
have to
back in
take
BFA.
the past expansion as a
ago.
point of reference. I hope that stagger will get buffed a little bit, because it's probably unplayable at this point, kind of the only tank unplayable based on numbers. And we can talk about the rework as well. The rework is slightly better in the way that the talents are and the pathing is. You can
Look at his health.
actually, I believe, get all of the capstones with Brewmaster at the moment, and I did play with all of the capstones. I didn't really feel the
My God, talk about a panic attack. This guy's like bouncing between 50 and 30% health constantly during this pull.
Of it though, and the Ox stance, although it's a cool mechanic, it didn't really feel like anything happened. It could also be slightly bugged or not working properly on beta, which makes it a little bit harder to kind of judge. But the concept is actually fun. And in playing with a hero talent, you do have a couple of options in how you create your mitigation. It's mixed opinions. With Shadow Pen, it seems like you're kind of focused a little bit on dodge. I believe there's a talent called Whirling Blades or something. When you dip below, you get a little bit of dodge and avoidance. And you do have a bunch of talents, like one that makes Sun Kick grant you a stack of Elusive Brawler, which gives you a little bit more dodge. It's just not as reliable as, let's say, Parry is for Vengeance, because once you dodge, you lose the dodge and you have to build the dodge back up, and it only really works on one attack. It might be pretty good for raids, but in dungeons, it doesn't really feel that great. And until Stagger gets buffed to like some fat numbers, Brewmaster is looking to be the weakest tank of them all. I initially wanted to put it into C tier, but I think the message will be sent more clearly if I put it into D tier. It's fun, and unfortunately, even if you play Master of Harmony, the hero talents feel very uneventful, unimpactful, and uninteresting whatsoever with Monk. It's criminal, considering that the Spec is actually doing better in terms of overall design. It could take a page out of the Windwalker book and make Rushing Jade Wind passive like it does with Windwalker, because I hate having to press it. But the benefits and the additions to the class talent tree make it a little bit better overall than the Dragonfly version. However, it cannot compare to the rest. Now, on to Bear. And this has
Druid.
been the biggest
I've been hearing good things about it.
All of the tanks. And it only does well to accentuate this point by just putting it into S tier directly.
Yeah, I heard a lot of good stuff about it.
The talent tree for Bear still has some issues. There are a bunch of 2-point nodes that kind of make it very cumbersome to build an actual build.
Because
with the two hero talents, it's clearly a divisive fantasy between Arcane Bear and Physical Damage Bear, where Elun's Chosen really favors Arcane. You actually get a lot of benefits from playing Arcane. If you do pick Elun's Chosen, you probably shouldn't.
I feel like Bear tanks, aren't they like freaking you click 2 or 3 things? They're one of the easiest tanks to play, probably, aren't they? I've never played one, but you know, I tank with Tally, right? I've tanked beside him. We've done raids together, and I just watch that man swipe constantly. He's just swiping around, grabbing shit. It feels like a much easier way to tank than Blood DK is, but good for them.
The physical talents of the Bear, like, I don't know, I want to say raise, but until
not as easy as DK.
Get that shit although some might work, because there is a talent
DK, you got to line up your defensives and constantly heal. Like, you can't just run into a mob and expect to survive without getting everything on uptimes correctly.
Chosen that makes Thrash actually do arcane damage and do a little bit more. I think it's 12 or 13% extra damage, and it all is arcane, which means that Thrash essentially just will work with all of the arcane talents, meaning that you can take stuff like Untamed Savagery and the double Thrash talent, and also Ursoc's Fury. However, I did take those, and it didn't really feel like it added a lot of value overall, not like it does for live. And unfortunately with this, if you do end up this route, because it sounds like you want to play this way, you will have to give up a lot of arcane talents, which is not particularly great. Maybe this could be a variant that you would play in Mythic Plus, while in raids you don't really care that much about all that Thrash, and you just go full deep into the arcane talents. that might be a way to play.
Sure.
And that's great. And actually, theory crafting and trying to figure out ways to implement all of these builds has been the most fun I've had with all of the tanks, because it made me feel like, okay, I have this hero talent and I have this playstyle.
You know what? It's fine when you gotta kind of have two different talent sets for Mythic Plus and rating, because you want to pull bigger mobs, bigger groups in Mythic Plus, obviously, and then rating is more single target tanking. But I'll be honest, I'm kind of lazy. I prefer to just have one spec for both. I like it when the meta is, oh, this is the same spec across the board. I don't really like the swap for one reason. I freaking forget to do it. We open up the key, and then I'm in like single target tanking spec, and I'm like, shit, we're screwed. We're screwed. Breaks the key.
I want to take those. They
and you don't
synergize
break
with
keys
that.
often.
That makes
me
that
sad.
better. This is the only tank where the hero talents actually made me
Yeah,
think
it's
about what talents I
saying.
would like to pick for my bear, and giving me a real feel and sense of an RPG as I'm building my character. How do I want my synergies to work? Where do I want the most benefit to be? Do I want the Moonfire to just give me all the buffs that I need? Do I want to convert a little bit into physical to have some absorb shields? Like that kind of theory crafting, I unfortunately did not do with any of the other tanks, which is why Bear is currently S tier.
Wow.
And now we're going to Protection Paladin. This is an
Ooh,
interesting
okay.
case.
Okay.
Because Protection Paladin's class tree, or spec tree rather, it kind of sucks in the way that
Oh.
you built it. It's still problematic because it feels like I have about 60
no.
to 70% of very mandatory talents that I'm just going to pick no matter what. 20% dead talents I'm never going to pick with Prop Paladin, and that hasn't changed. I think we mentioned this in our Prop Paladin video as well. And there's just like 1 or 2 points that I can swap around. It's a little bit of a difference between raid and dungeons. Very
But you
similar
see the
to
difference.
live.
Like, look, right now he's playing. Look at his health compared to how it was with the monk. So far, when he's shown gameplay, the monk's health was the worst of the. He was like sitting down here the entire time. At least Prop Pally's just sitting.
Even
at the
though
top.
there have been some changes. Bashing of Light is a good change, by the way. I really love Bashing of Light. And the hero talents slightly make you want to play some talents more than others, but
clearly
not
beta.
that
Someone went
not very
offline.
obvious that I could see. And I didn't really try to go into the class discourse to figure out what builds people have theory crafted, because that's something that you're probably going to do on live anyway. But I wanted to have the most accurate experience as a new player would have by picking up this class or picking up any of these specs and trying to figure out exactly what they should do based on the information that the game is giving them. It's not very intuitive, and it feels like you're just going to be a cookie cutter build. The hero talents, however, just make the specs so good. Oh, Prop Paladin just feels incredible to play with the hero talents at the very least. Templar especially is just super fun with Eye of Tears slapping really hard. I was surprisingly tanky. And to be fair, even with the spec talent
I'll be
tree,
honest, I love the whole class fantasy of being a paladin and just throwing your hammer around at everything and making it rain hammers and all that shit. I don't know which one of the hero talents that is, which one of the hero specs it is, but man, that it looks so badass, and like just the class fantasy of throwing your hammer around is pretty cool.
the addition to Consecration does actually help
But
in the
it
overall
sounds like they're
tankiness,
below blood
making
decay.
Consecration
I'm
a little
just
bit
saying.
bigger and keeping your bonuses
Templar,
once
yeah.
you leave the Consecration for a little bit. I didn't dip my HP as much as I would have on live if I would have played the, let's say, Priory of the Sacred Flame dungeon, where all of these packs that you probably see on the screen right now just put down big consecrations on the ground that you have to constantly move out. That is very poetic and ironic, by the way, because there are so many paladin mobs in the Priory dungeon that put down consecration that deals much damage to you that you have to move out of their consecration, and ironically out of your consecration as well.
That sounds absolutely like a nightmare. That sounds like a freaking nightmare. Playing that dungeon with a paladin tank is going to be horrible, because you don't know whose consecration is whose. Man, God, Blizzard,
Well,
damn it.
then you put down your consecration,
How
they
did they
put
not
down
see
their
the shit
consecration,
coming?
and round and round we go, moving out of consecration left and right for 70% of that dungeon.
Consecration,
That is very
concentration.
poetic, and still points out the issues with consecration will still remain, and the 4 seconds-ish or however long this mechanic will remain, similar for Blood Decay, by the way. It's just not fixing the problem. It's just patching an issue, and hopefully the combat design is in such a state that this is just enough to keep you alive. And with that being said, I want to put Prop Paladin into A tier because it's just a very fun tank to play with.
Warrior tank is the best tank. He hasn't ranked Warrior yet, but I am feeling that way, Moishin. Even before we watched this video, I started to think that, because the way the Mythic Plus affixes work, your health pool is going to be a big factor in how much you can take and how much damage you can survive through, especially with the affixes. And Warriors, I mean, historically can pack on the most stamina and health of all of these. So
Open
they
being
might be
S
the
tier
winners.
until it has some proper spec rework in terms of its own talents. Hero talents are fine. Listen, I am fine with Protection Paladin hero talents. They're good, they're fun, they're flashy. They could upgrade the Hammer of Light animation. For some reason, it just went away in this version of the beta. Hopefully,
Oh, he did.
comes as a
I didn't even notice. Yeah, he put it next to Blood DK. He talked about so much shit about it, and he put it next to Blood. What the hell?
Hammer animation. That would be great. But overall, I've had a lot of fun playing Prop Paladin. Prop Warrior is
Okay,
also
so
in the
we're
same
next to each
vein.
other.
Oh my god. I kind of
What?
want to put it into S tier, but I cannot do it justice. I'll put it at the top of the A tier. It's very close to being an S tier spec. Okay,
so
there are
the
a couple
best
of
of the
reasons
A
as to
tiers.
why it's so high and why it's not S tier. The reason why it is so high is because the hero talents are way cooler than
I think Warrior is gonna fall into S tier. I honestly do. Like I said, based on the affixes, I don't know if he knew them when he made this video, but I just feel like it really plays into the Warrior's specialty of, you know, big dick health, massive shield, tons of armor. Like that shit's gonna really work out really well for Mythic Plus.
I thought they would be. I started playing with Colossus, and Demolish is just incredible amounts of damage. And not just that, sure, that's damage. That's probably going to receive some nerfs. I don't know. It's hard to tell because the entire hero talent is focused on making this one ability super strong, whereas with Mountain Thane, your damage profile is spread across a bunch of other abilities. But with Colossus, it's just Demolish, right? If they nerf Demolish's damage, sure, that's fine. I don't think Protection Warrior is like king in damage in current expansion in Dragonfly, so I hope we don't see too many nerfs because Pro Warrior could use a little bit of damage, and that's a point that I want to make at the end of this section.
Okay.
But you're just super tanky.
Survivability,
oh my God.
yeah.
I think Prot Warrior is the tankiest tank so far.
Yeah, that's why I see him as S tier. Damage aside, I mean, you just get some good DPS, you can offset that. But just the survivability, which is the most important thing, I think Warrior is going to be the
and
best.
I've tried to go ape shit with pulling all of the packs that
Massive
I could.
pulls,
Bear is
yeah.
very close. I think Pro Warrior is still slightly tankier, which feels incredible. That's exactly how, first of all, a tank should feel, but exactly how Pro Warrior should feel. And that's why it's so high. It's not as high because the class tree is similar to Prop Paladin, very cookie cutter, very restrictive. There are like 90% of the talents that are almost mandatory to pick, and you have so little flexibility in making an actual build. Like, there are situations where I want to play Thunderlord and Brute Force or whatever the talent is, where you do Revenge and Thunderclap and they buff each other because they work really well with Mountain Thane, for instance. But putting both points in makes it 100% sure that I'm not picking the AoE silence on Challenging Shout, and that's very useful in a lot of these dungeons. And I'm also sacrificing another point from somewhere else in the tree. I can't remember, maybe Ravager or something like that, which is not something that makes me feel great. You might end up with like no capstones with Prot Warrior if you do want to play both of these talents, because Revenge just does way more damage if you care about revenge damage in the end. So that is actually a problem, and it's even worse than it is for Prop Paladin. I hope this changes, but I'm not holding my breath anytime soon. The hero talents are very fun, which is why Pro Warrior is all the way there. And I did want to point this out at the end of the section, like I mentioned. When playing all of these tanks, and we've known this for years with the Mythic Plus situation and in raids as well, Pro Warrior doesn't really bring a lot of utility to the group. This is not news. This is not a surprise. Like, we know right now, if you play on live, you actually cannot do, I don't think, any of the affixes whatsoever, while every other tank has something for some of these affixes.
Yeah.
So at the very least,
I talked about it when we read through them. Like Anti-Magic Shell sounds like it's going to be really good for some of these affixes. I'm sure Druid has some good combative stuff as well, like nature boost damage and stuff like that. Some weeks nature damage will be boosted and stuff. That's going to be really good for Druids. Obviously, those tanks are going to do more damage than that in those weeks. Yeah, I could see why Warrior wouldn't fit into any of those categories, but still, man, they're so tanky. They're just so tanky.
Pro Warrior should have damage and tankiness. If I'm not going to be able to contribute to my team's survivability, handle the mechanics and affixes and so on, at least let me be the tankiest and maybe do the most amount of damage. That can at least be Pro Warrior's flavor in the overall design. It's kind of like a little feed, let's say. Now, for the last piece of the cake is Vengeance Demon Hunter.
These guys have had a they've had a really good expansion with Dragonflight. They've been S tier for a little while now. Let's see where they fit in.
I'm not the best Vengeance Demon Hunter, but I have played the current version of Vengeance Demon Hunter, and I have played the beta version of the Vengeance Demon Hunter, and I have realized that, oh my god, it relies on the tier set way more than you might think. I've played Illuminated Sigils and played without Illuminated Sigils, and I think I felt way better without Illuminated Sigils by playing the Fiery Brand build, which was kind of like a staple for Vengeance for 4 years now. I think ever since Shadowlands, and it felt good. Vengeance is still fun to play, however, losing the tier set definitely affects it, and the hero talents are so terrible. Well, Aldrachi mostly. It just doesn't feel like it works well for the spec. You have to, like, if you get the Reaver's Glaive, that's, first of all, it takes so long to actually accumulate all of the soul fragments to get this in a reliable manner where you feel like it has.
Yeah, Helena, I'm sure there are no bad specs, just bad players. Yeah, that always fits in. But there are just, the problem is people look at these lists and that affects who they invite. So you just get less invites when you're at the bottom of the tier list.
And even if they buff the uptime of it, or rather the proc chance of it, or the amount of souls that you need to get it, it still just doesn't do any damage. I think overall, looking at my damage profile, I had more damage in Throw Glaive than in the buffed Throw Glaive, which was crazy. That's not something great.
So I wonder where he's going to, sounds like they're below.
I don't think Vengeance is going to retain its fun aspect of it. It's probably still a very strong tank. You do have particularly very good talents that will keep you up. You might not have as much parry as you do on live, and maybe you won't even play Illuminated Sigils in the first patch or the first tier of the War Within, considering that you're going to be a little bit lower on crit, you're going to be a little bit lower on agility, so your overall parry will be lower, and the reliance on parry being particularly high as it is on live is not going to be there. So you might have to go maybe more into Soul Crush or
any tank who's, I think I see a theme here, you know, with monks, demon hunter, anything that's relying on parry or dodges or things like that. It's going to take some really hard hits when those don't proc. And those hard hits are going to be even harder with the new affixes. So I think that's why this tier list is ranking out the way it is those new affixes really lead to some very hard hits, and whoever can take those hits better is going to be the better tank. That's why Druid is at the top, Prot Warrior is just beneath them, and then you got your Blood DKs who can take hits because they can heal through them.
Ability builds and stuff like that for Vengeance. And I'm only keeping it in B tier because overall it's still a strong tank. It has some cool utility, and it does feel like it still has the tools to handle pretty much anything dungeon scenarios and possibly even raids can throw at it, period. And this is how the ranking goes. It's still pretty fun, and the War Within expansion is looking like it's bringing a lot of love to a lot of the specs. As with Melee, which you can check on our channel, we've already done a video ranking all of the Melees in the same way that we've done for tanks, with talking about how the tier talents and the reworks feel for all of them. And hopefully this is not the last we'll see about these reworks, because the winners of any of these specs are just so incredible to play in the next expansion.
Well, great video. Yeah, it's good to see. Like I said, the way these affixes play, you know, hard hits, whoever can take the hard hits is the better tank. And it looks like Druid's going to be the top. Really close, I think, is Prot Warrior, honestly. And then Blood DK falling just behind. Demon Hunter, you know, they're going to have their problems, but they'll be okay. I just feel bad for monks, man. I think that's the main takeaway, guys. We should all feel bad for those Brewmaster monks. I mean, my God. They've had some tough times since BFA, that's for sure.